Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. I'm so excited once again. I have an amazing person on today. Her name's Tiffany Pranno. Welcome.
Hi, thanks.
Yes, I'm excited for you guys to hear her story. She's an amazing person, and you guys are going to love this. I do need to recognize our sponsor, Veracity Networks. I want to thank them for their support. And I also want to thank everyone who's listening and downloading these and sharing them. I'm getting such amazing responses, and I hope that'll continue, but I can't thank you guys enough for making this what it is. And so, Tiffany, thank you for taking the time today.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So I've known Tiffany for a while now. We both work together at Wasatch Recovery. She's a therapist there, and she's a licensed clinical social worker. She graduated her undergraduate degree in health promotion and education at the University of Utah, and then she went and got a master's at the University of Southern California, USC, which is really cool, I think. And she has two beautiful daughters. They're involved in dance, and I know you did dance growing up, and you're on the drill team and all that fun stuff. But her daughters are beautiful, and Tiffany's just such a great individual, and I'm grateful to rub shoulders with her at work, and she's agreed to come share her amazing story of overcoming addiction and how she's got to where she is today. So welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So why don't you let our listeners know a little background on you, like kind of where you grew up and about your family, and
Okay.
let's do that.
Yeah, I grew up in Utah. I was born in Utah, and I grew up in South Jordan. I have two parents that are still married and a little sister, and just Utah born and raised.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then as a young age, I'm assuming kind of like with your girls, you were involved in dance and things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did dance and drill team in high school and was a pretty straight shooter. I was very, I followed all the rules. And,
Did you?
Yeah. Very, very good little girl.
So let's talk a little bit about, because I know there's a lot of families out there who have girls in dance, and talk about that just a little bit. I know that we don't really talk about like this on there, but how did that help you growing up with like confidence and things like that?
Yeah, definitely helped me with confidence, determination, sticking with a schedule. My daughter actually is just starting right now, and she's starting to learn how to make new friends and how to be independent and be confident and have self-esteem and all of those things. I think they're great to keep kids involved in that kind of stuff, just because it keeps them determined and teaches them how to accomplish things in life. And so
absolutely. You know, it's funny too, because my girls did drill. They work harder than any sport I've ever I mean, harder than the football players, the basketball players, you name it. They are working every morning, every night, and it's such a commitment.
Yeah, it's a commitment. You're up at 5 a.m. and running miles around the track and, practicing dance and doing all these performances. It keeps you very busy, huge commitment, but you really learn determination. That's like the biggest thing that I would say. Determination and self-discipline are the biggest things that from dance, but more so from drill in high school that you learn.
Yeah. Well, it's cool to see your girls are getting involved in that at a young age, and because the benefits from it, and and I look at my girls, and I'm glad they went through that, because it taught them all those things you're talking about, and I mean that's priceless, right? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
So talk about your experience growing up. You as a young girl, and when did I know we're going to talk about how you overcome an addiction. Talk about when that came into play. Was that before or after high school, or that kind of thing?
So I grew up, like I said, in Utah. My parents were before I was 12, they weren't LDS, and they drank a lot and partied a lot, and I vaguely remember those days, just kind of being around it or whatever. But then we moved, and when I was 12, we got sealed in the temple. And so from 12 on, I was raised LDS.
Gotcha.
And
so real quick, so growing up until 12, there was a lot of drinking around. It probably just felt normal.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, this is what we do.
It's just normal.
Yeah.
My parents were never crazy drunk or anything like that. I just remember like pretend going camping and then being around the fire and everyone drinking and having fun while I was playing night games. So it wasn't anything like, I didn't learn any of that from my parents, but it's just, I say that because it's interesting because of the drastic change between I was like 12, up until I was 12 and the
Yeah.
life that we led. And then after I was 12 and what that was like growing up,
Yeah.
becoming LDS and what that meant for me and what that meant for my family.
And all of a sudden you're now going to church.
Yeah,
and
we're
things
going
like
to
that.
church.
Right.
One of the scariest things, I had a friend that says that because I wasn't going to church, I wasn't going to see my family after I died. And I was very impressionable this is right when I was 12, and I actually went
Yeah.
back to my parents and I was like, we have to go to church. We have to go to church.
That's
So
a scary
it
thing though as a
scared me
kid.
as a
Yeah.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the reasons why my parents started going to church, and because of that day, because I was so terrified of just a friend and when her telling me that.
Right.
So yeah, I was, good and everything. I did drill. I was committed. Then I went to college and I was dancing in college as well. And I had a boyfriend who did drugs and who drank a lot. And so
Okay.
I was at my parents' house one day, and my dad, when I was younger, this is just a side note, he dove into a pool and broke his neck and
Wow.
was paralyzed for like 3 days or something.
Wow.
And then he woke up and started being able to move his toes. And so he's a total miracle.
Yeah, it sounds like that.
Yeah.
That's a scary time.
He had a halo like drilled
Oh,
into his head.
really?
And
Okay.
just, this is when I was really little.
Yeah.
But because of that, he had a lot of pain medication still. Just like our cupboard was like full, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I had this boyfriend who came in and showed me what liquid hydrocodone was. And I remember that was the very first time I had tried anything. And we drank the bottle and went outside and like looked at the stars. And I remember being like, this is awesome. This
Yeah.
feels good,
Yeah.
And from that point forward, I just tried some, and I gradually moved up to the point where I was doing Oxycontins.
All right. And still with the same boyfriend.
Yep.
And
Yep.
doing that with him, obviously.
Yeah. So we were driving to Vegas and getting oxys and driving back, and he moved to St. George and I was driving up to St. George every weekend. It just not being safe, just
Right.
reckless. And my parents didn't know what to do with me. They were so scared, and I just was
So
pushing them
did
away.
they know at the time that you were abusing?
Not for a while. It wasn't until I would say a year down the road where they started.
So a year
being
later,
like,
they started noticing something's off with you, and
yeah.
right.
Something was off with me. And then the thing that like pushed them over the edge was they were doing dishes or something, and my boyfriend was shooting this stuff up, and I was not, but he was. And my mom found a spoon that had like residue on it, and she was like, came to me in my room with this, and I just froze. And she knew what it was,
Right.
and I thought she was dumb and she had no idea, but she knew what it was. And so they kind of freaked out. And
Yeah, I bet.
yeah. Well, he ended up overdosing and almost dying. And so at that point, my parents held me close and they were like, you're staying home. We don't, he's in the hospital for 3 days. They told him he was going to be a vegetable, everything. So my parents kind of made me stay home, and I had to detox at home off of Oxycontin by myself. And I didn't know what I was doing. I
Right.
didn't know. My parents didn't know. I didn't know. I just kind of stayed in bed for a few days, and I detoxed off of them and was able to stop. And so I got clean off of Oxycontin, and I didn't really drink that much. I started going to the U, and
Right.
and so that was kind of my first battle with addiction.
First battle with it.
Yeah.
Did you end up staying after your boyfriend at that time overdosed? Did you end up still dating him afterwards,
No.
or is that when you kind of, with obviously the push maybe from your parents, hey, you need to stay away because it's not
not
toxic
safe. Yeah.
and it's not safe.
Yeah. We tried a few times. My parents like restricted. They're like, no, you cannot. And so I kind of rebelled against that and pushed against it and tried to stay with him.
Yeah.
But I ultimately grew out of that because I wasn't in that life anymore. And I ultimately had to say no. And he threatened to kill himself and all because he was still in it. And I was able to see like the unhealthiness that was going on there as I started to get healthy. And so, no, we didn't stay together.
Yeah. You hear that a lot with situations like that where if the relationship's going to end and the person who doesn't want it to end will threaten, I'm going to take my life. And yes, you have to take it serious, but at the same time, it's almost their way to manipulate you to stay in the relationship, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And had I not been so impressionable, I probably would have, because we loved each other or whatever. But for some reason, I grown out of it enough to see that it was really unhealthy. I was
Right.
able to recognize that, which still kind of surprises me, just because I was so heavily involved in it and so blinded by just this whole life that I was living. So it's kind of it's a blessing that I was able to pull through that, or else I would be shooting heroin right now like he is.
Right. Yeah.
I never got to that heroin point.
Yeah. Luckily, right?
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. When you said, so you started dating this guy, did you know when you first started dating him that he was doing drugs and drinking? Did you know that was what his lifestyle was like?
I knew that because when I started dating, he wasn't doing drugs yet. We kind of started doing drugs, meaning pain pills, and we would do cocaine. But like at first, I knew that he would drink, and I knew his family was a really big partier. But
Okay.
I had this idea like, oh, I'll bring him to church, and I'll,
Yeah.
I'll help him, that kind of a thing. So yeah, I was aware of it.
Yeah. So, what do you think, because you and I talk with our clients all day long about belief systems and how that affects our behavior and determines what we do a lot of times,
Yeah.
if not every time. What were some of those beliefs you had about you? Because you said you were almost kind of like you were just this believing person and you just innocent and kind of went along with everything.
Yeah.
What were some of the belief systems you think that you were wrestling with at that time?
So one of the things, I've thought about this a lot, and one of the things with growing up the way that I did is I learned at an early age, when we started going to church and stuff, I learned that my parents would lie to me a lot. They would make up stories and just kind of odd stuff. But I learned that if nobody was looking or if nobody knew about something, then it wasn't happening.
Okay.
And I have this
Interesting.
memory of going to the grocery store on Sunday and coming back and my dad closing the garage, and I was like scooting between the garage and my car unloading groceries, and it was like nobody could see that we went to the grocery store on Sunday.
Gotcha.
And so I grew up this belief, like no integrity, even though I was in this like sheltered kind of life, like no real true integrity. And so honestly, being as impressionable as I was, and 16 years old, nobody knew that I was doing this, taking my dad's medication or drinking. At the time, nobody knew. And it was almost like it was okay. I honestly look at that and I believe like it was okay. Nobody knew that I was doing it. It wasn't a big deal.
Interesting.
And that belief system followed me all the way up through the second part of my addiction. And I'll talk about that. But that's one of the things that, comes to mind when you ask that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think a lot of our clients would hey, if no one can see it, I'm okay. No one knows and I think that's the justification we'll use for the behavior, right? A lot of times. And I can relate with that because I've done that as well. And back in the day, especially, but that's interesting that's what you kind of formed from that,
Yeah. Yeah. It was a big part of my addiction. And then it was a big part as I got back into it. And there's a moment that I'll tell you about where that changes in my life. And I realize that that's no longer my belief system.
Okay. Yeah. I can't wait to get to that. So your ex-boyfriend, he overdoses. You try to stay with him a little bit, but eventually you start to see how bad and toxic this is and you move on. So let's go from there.
Yeah. So I moved on. I went to college, or I went to the University of Utah. I coached drill at Cottonwood High School for a few years. I started their drill team program, was doing really, really well.
Yeah.
And then I met my husband and my ex-husband. Oops.
Yeah. Well, we know. Yeah, that's all right.
So I met my ex-husband, and we dated for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and then we got married 5 years later. And
right.
So it was after we got married, I started drinking a lot again.
Okay.
With him. So it's kind of like I did the same thing as I did with my prior boyfriend.
Kind of the same pattern, right?
I was doing really well, but like on my own and independent and living a great life. And then I met him and started drinking again, and that partying all of the time. And that one thing led to another too, where it was a big problem. And
I know you work with a lot of female clients who kind of go through the same thing you did. Let our listeners kind of know, like, what does that mean when you keep following the same pattern relationship wise. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's just like a familiar, at least for me, the first time that I went through my boyfriend, I had this idea that like I was good and I was not better than, but like I could handle it and I could help this person, if you want to say. Like this person is not doing, or that maybe they're partying and I don't really agree with that, and I'm going to help them to become a better person. And that's how I felt with my ex-husband as well, is like, not that he was doing bad or he wasn't addicted or an alcoholic or anything like that, but he lived a different life than I did. And so it was almost like, if we get together, like I can help him and we'll become better people together, kind of a thing. We'll do this thing together. And that's not the case.
Yeah, what do we call that? Magical thinking sometimes?
Magical
like,
thinking.
well, I'm going to somehow change this person.
I'm going to change this person, yeah.
And can it happen? I guess it can. Sure, yeah, but ultimately the change comes from that individual.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you meet your ex-husband, and did you know at that time too he was a drinker?
Yeah.
Had already started drinking before you met him, or did it kind of start as you dated him?
It started as I dated him.
Okay.
Yeah. And he is quite a bit older than me, actually.
Okay.
And our life was very lavish. We traveled a lot. We went on cruises. We got engaged at the Top of the Palms Hotel in Las Vegas.
Oh, really? All right. So you got engaged at the Palms?
Yeah, Top of the Palms Hotel. And I just say that because it was just, everything was like exaggerated. My parents didn't, this is another pattern that I fell into. My parents didn't want me to date my boyfriend when I was 16. They didn't want me to date this guy because he was a lot older than I was. And so we kept it a secret for a while again. And I would fly to Los Angeles and, we would party and like, it was like almost the exact same situation again. And I fell in love with him, but also this life. Like none of my friends were doing the stuff that I was doing.
Like this lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was drinking and stuff, but it was like in my eyes, like the glorious part of drinking. Like as bad as that sounds, you know what I mean? Like it was a lifestyle that we led that was fun. If I'm being honest, it was fun.
Yeah. No, thank you.
So,
yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people that would understand it's easy to get caught up into that.
Yeah.
It's like, man, look what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I got to do all this fun stuff.
Yeah. So I lived that life and I rebelled, if you will. I was 25 years old, but my parents didn't want me to marry him. And at some point I was going to. I loved him and he loved me. And so they kind of joined on and we got married and had a great relationship. And my parents started to love him. I ended up having kids with him. So it ended up being okay. But at first it was like really scary for my parents because they were like, she's dating this older guy. She's now going back to drinking and all that stuff. Yeah. And my drinking never was a problem until later on. Like it was just drinking and we would go boating and we would do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it wasn't necessarily a huge problem for you. So you get married, you're having kids and, things seem to be going in a good direction. So let's go from there.
Yeah. So I have my first baby and I get really, really bad postpartum depression. And I started drinking really bad then and to cover up with that depression. And as I got out of the depression and got better, I stopped, like the drinking wasn't as bad. And I actually was making efforts to not drink at all. I wasn't very successful at it, but I would, like if we were going to go partying or like I was the one that was like, no, I can't do that. Cause my drinking got to a point where I was scared when I was so depressed.
Okay.
And then I had my second baby, my second little girl, and the depression was probably 2 times as bad. And, a month after I had her, I had to go to uni because it was so bad. It was postpartum depression with psychotic features is what they called it.
Really?
And I had to go up to uni for 5 days and get on some medicine and to stop me from drinking because my husband found me in my bed with a bottle of whiskey in my hand. And I was just...
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's explain uni for our listeners because a lot of people went, no, it's okay. Explain what that is.
Yeah. Uni is University what is it called?
Neuroscience or
something. It's a psych hospital.
Yeah.
It's a psych hospital where people go. They can go there to detox from drugs,
Right.
but it's also a mental health
Yeah.
neuropsychiatric unit is what it's called.
There we go.
And so there's from people who are having like psychotic breaks, there's that level, there's different floors, and then there's people who are detoxing, and then there's people with mental health problems. And so mine was combined with detoxing off of alcohol and then my mental health
Right, okay.
aspect of it, where I got on some medication management, and they kind of got me clean and got me stable, and then started a medicine regime for me. And so, yeah.
So when you were up there for your 5 days, which is
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of a long time,
Mm-hmm.
it probably felt like, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was going through your mind, if you can think back at
So
that
my
time?
biggest thing at that time was I was totally playing the victim in that
Mhm.
I had, well, and I don't know if it's victim really because it was true, but I had a 1-month-old baby at home, and I was really upset that I was there. And I kept saying, you know, how do you separate a mother from her 1-month-old baby? You know,
Right.
I wasn't able to really focus on anything. I was just so concerned that I wasn't,
About that.
yeah,
Sure.
you know, I was breastfeeding her, and I had to stop doing that when I went up there. And that was devastating to me. So that
Yeah.
was really all I thought about when I was there.
Yeah, and I think any mother listening to this would agree, like, how
Mhm.
hard that would be.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though it's 5 days, it did seem like forever. And we had to break that bond. I mean, she was 1 month old, and I knew I had to go. I knew I had to go. I knew I wasn't well.
Yeah.
I knew that, you know, I would get up and I would take care of her, and then I would just go to bed. I didn't even want to get out of bed. I had to have my mother-in-law come and like help me take care of the baby because I just was so depressed.
Couldn't even function. It
I
sounds
couldn't
like,
function.
yeah.
No, I couldn't function.
Wow. So you go to the uni for 5 days,
Mhm.
and then you come back home.
I come back home.
Talk about that.
Yeah. Came back home and didn't do any better. Within a month, I was back up at uni.
Mm.
And this time was mainly more just for drinking. Just kept drinking.
So you kept drinking.
Kept drinking. And at that time, my marriage was falling apart. So the second time I went up to uni, we were talking about getting divorced. And along the way, and I don't like talking about this, but he actually cheated on me when I was pregnant. And so that didn't help the situation at all. So I was pregnant, having babies, and that changes your body and my self-esteem
Yeah.
and all of it. So there's
I'm
a
not
lot of
pretty enough
factors.
anymore.
Yeah.
Was this after your second child?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
So when I was pregnant with my second
When
child,
you
it
were
wasn't
pregnant. Oh,
happened.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the whole loss of self-esteem and all of that came along with having a baby, came along with the changes that your body goes through, came along with the fact that I was drinking, came along with the fact that I couldn't function and I was depressed. Like it was this big whirlwind
Wow.
of hardship.
I mean, that is a lot to deal with, honestly. Like
Mhm.
you, even the way you're describing, I mean, anyone under that kind of, I guess, situation would
Mhm.
feel exactly what you were feeling, probably to the point where you felt hopeless,
I did. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I did. And that's why I had to go back to uni. I wasn't ever suicidal, but I just was hopeless. And
Right.
I was like, you know, I felt worthless. I felt hopeless. I felt like I was never going to be able to stop drinking because my life was just in shambles. And so, yeah, that's when it got seriously out of control. And I was really scared. I was really scared. So I got out of uni for the second time. We're going through a divorce, and I actually end up getting a DUI. So that was a big change for me. And after my DUI is when I went to treatment for the first time.
Okay.
So
So you get a DUI. Is that the first time you had to run in with the law when it came
Yeah.
to your drinking? And
no, actually, that's not true. We had a big fight. This was actually right after I got out of uni. We had a big fight, and I was drinking a lot, and I had my little baby and then my 3-year-old, and we get into a big fight, and I called the police because things aren't going well.
right.
And the police came, and they had to separate us, and we got in some big trouble and some charges with like domestic. There was no violence going on, but just the fact that we were fighting the way that we were in front of our
kids,
children.
yeah.
So that was my first run-in with the law, if you will. And then, yeah, I got my DUI. And so that was the second time that, like, now things are getting really bad. I'm drinking and driving and getting caught and getting arrested. And, you know, what in the hell is wrong with me?
Yeah. So what was the story you were telling yourself going through all that?
looking back, it was being victim. I was the victim to these circumstances, but it was so true to me at the time. Like, I really felt like I was a victim of him and him cheating on me and, you know, the postpartum. Like, I really felt like I was a victim to certain things.
Well, postpartum depression is real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not something you were making up or so. I mean, you really were a victim to that actually in that moment, right? Maybe these other things, you know, but you started telling yourself that story, right?
Yeah.
But how did you, you know, so you get the DUI and you understand you're going to get a divorce at this point as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, man, you're dealing with a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I knew none of this. This is wow.
Yeah. So, you know, getting DUIs and all of that, I'm in the middle of getting a divorce and there's custody issues. And so I had to get better. I had to fix my situation because I wasn't going to lose my kids, you know.
Right.
And that was never really the case. Like he knew he had a part in the situation and he knew that I was dealing with some postpartum and stuff. So he never threatened to take my children away or anything. But I knew myself that if I didn't get better, I wasn't going to be the mom that I know I could be. So,
which you also were jeopardizing. You could lose them.
Yeah. If I kept going down that road. Yeah,
right.
I would have lost them for sure. And so I went to treatment for them. And when I was in treatment, everyone's like, you have to do it for yourself. And I agree with that. But they were a huge motivating factor because I didn't have any self-worth. I didn't have any self-worth. I lost it.
How could you find it in you?
Yeah. I had to find that. It's called an internal locus of control, meaning at that time it was an external locus of control. That was what was motivating me to get better. And I needed that because I had no self-worth or no self-esteem or anything at that point.
Yeah. And I'm glad you point that out because I think that's very common when people first come into treatment. It's usually because something happened. They're getting pushed from the law, court ordered, family saying they put an ultimatum.
Yep.
But we hope eventually it shifts to where, well, now I'm actually doing this for me.
Yeah.
Internal, like you said. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah. So I went to treatment. I got out. I had to go back to treatment for 2 weeks. I got out and I just it got better every time.
So you just kept relapsing as you would leave, go back to treatment.
Yep. And this was all during the divorce and stuff. So I would get a little bit better, but I would still be drinking and I'd have to go back. And there was like a ultimatum last time at some point, my last time that I went to treatment. And
tell us about that.
Yeah, my family just was done with it. And you know, I didn't have anywhere. He was living in the house and I couldn't live there, and I didn't have a job, and we were in the middle of it, so he wasn't paying me any money yet. And so I had to live with my parents. It's 2 little girls, and I'm in my parents' basement. I'm super depressed and not functioning very well. And I remember there being a moment where I was downstairs. I could still see it, and I was like, this has to end. Like, I found some sort of motivation within myself, and I said, I have to do this. I have to do this.
Yeah.
So I went and I told my dad I needed to go to the hospital because I needed to detox again. And he took me there, and he's like, Tiffany, this is the last time I'm doing this. And I believed him.
Right.
And
How did that feel, hearing that?
It was gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
I can still feel it now. Like, I just knew he was serious.
Yeah.
And I detoxed, and it was so bad that time. And I said, I will never do this again. I will never do this again. And everyone has a moment. I feel like everyone has a moment like that. I get chills when I talk about it because I had that moment, and I will never do this again.
It's when you knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You finally made that decision, and it came from within instead of from without.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Exactly.
Love
and it
that.
was a game changer.
Yeah.
So I went to treatment, and I had that inside of me, and I knew it, and nobody believed me. And you know, going through treatment as many times as
no one's gonna believe you.
No one believed me.
Yeah.
But I knew it inside, and I knew that was what was pushing me. And I always picture this as like I'm in a black tunnel, and it had been pitch black for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I get into treatment this time, and I like see a pinpoint of light somewhere. I just see it because I know that I'm gonna do this differently this time. And as I got through treatment, the light got a little bit bigger. And after I completed treatment, I went to sober living,
Okay.
and it got a little bit better. But it was still pretty much dark because
Yeah.
I wasn't living with my kids, you know.
Yeah, that's
And then and so then I got a job I had my master's degree already, so I forgot to say that I had got it
So
while
you'd
I
already
was married.
completed
So I
that as
already
well.
completed that.
Okay.
So I'm living in sober living, and I don't have a job, and I get this job as a receptionist at a salon, and I have to take the bus there because I had lost my license. And so I'm taking public transportation. I'm going to the salon. I'm working, and it just was the interesting fact that I had my master's degree and I was working as a receptionist. It just shows kind of like where I was.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I would take anything to start getting back on my feet. And I remember at a point I was doing inventory or whatever, and there had been times where I had like taken some shampoo and all, and this belief that like if nobody knows, it's not happening, kind of a thing.
Right.
And it hit me at one point, and I was taking this stupid little bottle of shampoo, and I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like
Really?
I'm like I will never do that anymore. And that belief of like, that when you're doing something, if it's nobody's looking, it's not happening. I gained integrity at that point, and that also was a life changer.
Yeah, it's kind of like
so many ways.
Wow, that's amazing that you can actually still pinpoint that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm stealing a small piece or a small bottle of shampoo.
Why?
What's the point? Yeah.
And it's so silly, but it was a life changer, actually, to actually have some integrity, and it changed my outlook on life. It changed so many things about what I was doing, and that light at the end of the tunnel got a little bit bigger.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm getting chills when you say that. Like, it's those moments. See, I talk about this a lot with the clients, how change can happen in an instant, but there's all this stuff that leads up to that instant, right? So you had all this stuff going on. You were working on yourself. You were in treatment, doing all these things a little differently, maybe working a little harder. And then you have that moment with the shampoo.
Yeah.
Wow.
A little bottle of shampoo.
Amazing.
And I decided at that point I'm going to have some integrity. And that spread into my life in all different areas. It spread into my life of the divorce and how honest and, transparent I was being with that, and owning my problems and owning the fact that I needed help, and being integrous with my children and helping them through it. It just like, what's the word? It just went into all aspects of my life, and it made a huge difference at that point. And that light, like I said, got a little bit bigger.
Wow.
And so, are you gonna ask something?
No, keep
okay.
going.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just over here going, wow. I really think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I will say something.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're good.
If that's okay. I love that you said this because, there's this thing called Kairos moments. The Greeks have this saying, they call it the tap on the shoulder. Or in other words, they call it's a Kairos moment. Or in other words, it's a transformational moment in time. Like you called it a game changer, like life changing.
Life changer, yeah.
And I just want to point that out, that I think we all have those moments, but we have to do something about it when we have that moment. And I think that's what you're going to get into in a minute here. But I just want to point that out, that we all have them. And if you look back in your life, I had that moment, and that led to this moment, and over here, and so I just wanted to point that out, that I think we all have those transformational, game-changing moments. So,
and that was definitely one of them.
Wow, so cool.
Me putting that shampoo bottle back and saying, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to do that anymore, and I'm going to have integrity.
Yeah.
And being able to be transparent changed my ability to get sober, because I was transparent. I wasn't keeping secrets anymore. I wasn't trying to cover stuff up. I wasn't trying to make myself look in a certain light for my ex-husband or for my parents. Like, I just was like, I need help. I need help, and this is what I need to do to get it. And so I got out of sober living, and where I went to sober living, it was life changing as well. It was just a really good program. I went to Balance House, and it's a really, really good program. And,
they're great.
They definitely taught me some stuff, and just got me back on my feet with regard to like budgeting my money and like having accountability with UAs, and just the way that it worked is what I needed at the time. I needed some structure and I needed some guidance, and I needed to be able to do that while also living a normal life. And so that combination was really helpful for me. So I got out of sober living and I went and I had to live in this basement apartment with my 2 kids and work at this salon. I'm trying to get on my feet.
Right.
And like keeps getting a little bit bigger, and I get a job at Wasatch as a line staff graveyard shift.
Yeah. I remember that was one of the first times I saw you just in the hall here. And I'll be quite honest, you didn't seem very happy.
No.
When I first met you. Not that you were being mean, or I could just tell, like you're saying, like the light was getting bigger, but it wasn't fully there yet.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I hope that's okay.
No, you're fine. I wasn't. I wore a hat a lot.
Yeah.
I had my head down a lot.
Yeah.
I had this idea in my heart, though, that I knew what I wanted to do, and that was to help other people with struggling with addiction. And as I was learning how to do it myself, I had this idea that I was going to give it back, and I was going to give it back. And starting working here was that turning point of me being able to give that back. And it was at the bottom of the barrel. I was cleaning toilets here, but I had this determination that I was gonna do big things with this.
Yeah.
And so even getting a job here, the light got a little bigger, and then I got during the day, and it got a little bit bigger. And along the way, I started talking to them about being a therapist, and I remember the day they said, "Yeah, come to a clinical meeting with us, and we'll start."
I remember that actually when we actually talked about it behind the scenes, and then you were at our clinical meeting.
It was in a clinical meeting, and I was just grinning from ear to ear. I was so excited.
Yeah, you could tell that was like another moment for you.
Yeah. So I go there, I get in the clinical meeting, I start learning, and I start doing and meeting with clients, and start learning how to do all this, and it just keeps getting bigger, and my sobriety was on point. Like it was
right.
I was good at that time. I had spent however many years working on getting sober, and at this point I'm sober and I'm holding down a good job, and at that point I had gotten into my own apartment, and I support myself and my kids by myself. Like he doesn't really help still.
Right.
And so being able to support myself and my 2 girls, and
it's amazing.
Compared to where I was in a basement with my parents' apartment, or in my basement apartment, like it was a big deal.
Wow. That's so cool. And the listeners won't know this, but if it's okay for me to say this, I watched you from the day you started till even to this very moment. And if people knew you like right now and just saw how you conduct yourself, and how you do a process group, and how you just do your job, and the way you raise your kids, they wouldn't have any clue. Like, she was that person. You were the one that went to uni twice, got a DUI, blew up your life, got a divorce, all this stuff.
Yeah.
They would know none of that.
Yeah.
Like, and really, I honestly can say this. I've been doing this a long time. The transformation you made, even as a therapist, from the time you started till now, is pretty remarkable.
That's awesome.
It's been a big eye opener for me to see that in you. It's really cool.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I've seen the growth as well. Yeah. And it all came to a head just recently when I kind of had these mile markers in my life, like, okay, I'm going to get out of sober living. Now I'm going to get my apartment. Now I'm going to get a job. And now I'm going to become a therapist. And then it was this last piece of getting licensed.
Right. Fully licensed.
Yeah. And I was so nervous to take this test. It was everything that I had done had kind of came up to this moment of, if you want to do this, you pass this test and you're good. That light is full. You're in the light. You're out of this dark tunnel is what I thought. Right. I remember coming to you and talking to you, and we talked about visualization. Yeah. And, that belief that if you believe in yourself enough and you do the things to prepare yourself to get there, it will happen. Yeah. And you did prepare a lot. I mean, you were constantly studying, taking practice tests. Yep. I'm going to say this, like you even said, I'm not dating at all. Yep. While I'm studying, because I'm that dedicated, that focused on it. Yep. And that reminds me of when you go back to what you learned on the drill team, to be committed to something
And if you do, you get a result in the way that you'd want it.
It's
And I
so
saw
true.
that in you
It's so
when you were
true.
studying for the test.
Yeah, it's so
Right?
true. Yep.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Those are the life skills that you learn
Yeah.
for sure.
So how it came back almost full circle.
Full circle. Yep.
You know, you
And
had
dedication
yeah.
and scheduling and getting up earlier before work and studying and
Yeah.
not dating, which was nice actually.
There's a lot of benefits, so right? You were seeing not just that, but
No, that was kind of my excuse. No, I'm just kidding.
no, I know.
But so I was nervous and I talked to you and you like got me inspired and I was like, I am doing this.
Sweet.
Like I am doing this. And I went and I took it and I passed and I started bawling. I can get teared up talking about it right now, but I just started bawling in the testing center. I was like, I did it.
I felt emotional for you. I was like so excited for you when you said I passed. You sent that text out, and
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I knew you would.
Yeah.
It's so
it was
cool.
like I did it. I did it.
Yeah,
And yeah. So that leads up to now. And
it's amazing.
I get to, all of that added up with everything involving like my treatment and involving my experience with drink. All of it adds up to this point where I get to do what I love to do every day.
Right.
And I get to pass that knowledge and that awareness and that everything on with combination of life experience and then education as well.
Right.
It all comes together into this great situation that I'm in where I'm able to do what I love.
Yeah. And if we really look at the timeline, I mean, it's a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that we can throw that term out, just throw it out. Yeah, it's a miracle, but it really is.
It really is.
It truly is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even that moment where you had putting that shampoo bottle back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that in itself, imagine if you would have taken it, what would have that led to ultimately?
Ultimately, yeah.
Right?
Could have led to, I could give you 6 different scenarios right now that wouldn't have led me here.
You probably wouldn't be here because you would have justified that. You would have done it again somewhere else. You would have,
And then that leads to, it really leads to this life of not having integrity. And that breeds a life of addiction, I feel.
For sure.
You can continue doing all these negative things to your life and to your body without really taking accountability for it when you don't have any integrity.
Yeah.
You don't have accountability for yourself.
Yeah, that integrity piece is huge, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, there's a couple more things I want to ask you. Your story is amazing. Talk about just briefly how important it is to give back and help others, because that's what you're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
How important is that in your recovery?
It's very important in my recovery because I just, like I said, along the way in my recovery, I had this idea that I wanted to help other people because my life was changing so dramatically because of the people that were helping me in my life, my therapists, my sober living people, the people that I learned to be part of my sober support network. Like they were all helping me change my life so dramatically. And I had this goal, like, hey, I learned this. I'm going to be able to go back and I'm going to be able to help somebody get through this, get through a divorce, get through going to sober living, helping somebody see the benefits of going to sober living, like everything, like being able to pass that information along to somebody. It's so rewarding. It is. It's rewarding. And I can see like I can pass along that and help change somebody else's life.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like we say all the time to our clients, life happens for you. You're in a position to help now because of what you've been through. Yep. So it was all for your benefit.
Exactly.
Ultimately, right?
Yep. And that's the other belief system is life. It was hard to see that in the middle of it all.
It's tough when you're going through it.
When you're going through it. But if we start believing that and then even when you look back, it's like, yeah, I had to go through all of that.
Yeah.
In order to get to this great place where I am in my life right now.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I call this a belief cast for a reason because I'm just fascinated by beliefs and how powerful they are, good or bad, in our lives. And it's great to see how you've shifted these beliefs into what you believe now and how your behavior mirrors it. And it's really fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, I believe that I could along the way. Like, nobody would have known it. I just knew in myself, like that little teeny piece of hope got, and it was totally believing that I could do it. So
awesome. Well, if there's some people listening now who are struggling, whether it's with postpartum depression or addiction or just trying to find their way, or they're going through a divorce, or
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm asking a lot here, but
No, yeah.
what advice could you give these people right now that maybe feel like they don't see that pinpoint of light at the end of their tunnel right
Mm-hmm.
now?
Find it somewhere. Find that, look at your life and find that pinpoint of life somewhere. It'll be there. You just have to look for it. And it might just be something so simple like being able to get out of bed in the morning and get ready.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it could be something as simple as that. If you're
Yeah.
deep in the trenches, being able to get up and get dressed and brush your teeth, if that's all you can do that day,
Yeah.
let that be that pinpoint of light.
Yeah.
Would be my kind of word of advice.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, I know you had a few of those along the way. One of them is,
Mhm.
your girls, you were thinking,
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming to treatment for them,
Yep.
And that was your pinpoint of light,
Mhm. Yeah.
and so, yeah, that's great advice, and I would also add, if you are struggling, reach out to someone, talk to someone. If you're feeling depressed and down, obviously you did, because your family
Get
obviously,
help. Yeah.
helped you out along the way.
Yeah. I was in a place where I needed help, and I needed people to help me get the help that I needed.
Right.
And so relying on people that love you and care for you, like giving into the process, we call it surrendering. Surrender in and let people who love you help you. And you might not like how they do it or the way that
Right.
they do it, but
Yeah.
accept that help. That's been a big thing with me being a single mom, is accepting help.
Right.
Being married and having my own house and paying my own bills and doing all of this stuff as I was married to a place where I'm not able to do that. I had to accept a lot of help from my family in order to be able to support me and my girls. And so that's another example of like, let people help you.
Gotcha. Love it. Very cool. If you could give us a challenge, give our listeners a challenge, something they could do to better themselves right now or change their perspective on things.
This is still, it's pretty simple. But it's something that I started doing a long time ago, and it's just the gratitude list. I would
Yeah.
challenge you
Okay.
to live a life of gratitude, and whether that be you write 5 things down that you're grateful for every day, or you live a life where you're looking for things to be grateful for. And that changes your entire perspective and outlook on life.
Right.
And like, for example, the other day I was heating up my food in a microwave, and I was like, this is convenient,
Oh, this is pretty cool.
It's so
Yeah.
silly, but I was like, I'm really grateful for this microwave.
Yeah.
Just like, it changes the way that you think when you're
Yeah.
looking for things to be grateful for.
Love it.
So I would just challenge
Okay.
you to identify 5 things, whether you write them down or you just keep a little mental note and just say, I'm so grateful for this person or this situation or this microwave or whatever it is.
Right. Great advice. I love it. Gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am grateful for you, Tiffany. I'm
Thank
grateful
you.
that I get to work with you. I'm grateful that you shared your story with me and with everyone who's going to be hearing this. So I can't thank you enough. If someone wants to reach out to you and ask you
Mm-hmm.
a question or, get some advice from you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
You can email me at Tiffany, tiffany.wasatch@gmail.com. Or you can find me on Instagram. It's at tprann, TPRANN. Those would be 2 ways
Okay, great.
to get a hold of me if you would
Okay.
like to. So
Well, there you go, listeners. Reach out to Tiffany. Ask her any questions you might want more information on.
We
And,
love
and
to help.
she loves to help. Yeah. She loves to give back, and that's why she's doing so well.
Yep.
So there you go, man. Another amazing Belief Cast. And Tiffany, thank you for taking the time to do this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me,
You
Todd.
bet. Listeners, there you go. Another great one. Go take this information and go make your life amazing. Remember, believe that you have it, and you have it. It's so simple, but yet so true, and can't thank you enough. Till next time.